Making Big Shifts, presented by Marketing Reboot, with your host, Josh Anderson.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Making Big Shifts by Marketing Reboot. I'm your host, Josh Anderson, where we talk to real entrepreneurs making really big shifts and the real results that followed. Today, I'm really excited to have author and podcaster Dylan Conroy here. He's the host of the Ad Podcast, where he interviews C-suite leaders across media, branches, agencies, and MarTech. So a lot going on there. He's also the author of the Amazon best-selling book, Going Deep, Principles of Building Business Relationships with AI. So welcome, Dylan.
Well, thanks, Josh. Really appreciate having me on, man.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you. You're an entrepreneur for sure. So there's a lot we can dive into here. So I do want to get into, it seems like every time I have a podcast, it always goes into AI somehow, of course, right? Just because it's fundamentally shifting everything we do. So we got to start with this book, right? So tell me a little bit about the book and how you see AI shifting the business landscape in general.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, look, the fact is I wouldn't have a book and if it wasn't for AI, right?
Yeah.
So, full transparency, I used a ghostwriter for this book. So a friend of mine who's co-authored in the book, it's not like I ghostwrote it and didn't give him credit for it, but Nathan Pettyjohn, he's right
Yeah.
there.
Love the
He's
cover.
Thanks, man. Yeah, he's my fraternity brother. I've known him going on, 15, 18 years probably. And he runs a little agency called Corduroy that helps rich people become famous, is basically the best way I can
Okay.
talk about it.
Yeah.
So there's a certain level of success that you can get through being an entrepreneur and you can make a lot of money. And then one day you wake up and you're like, well, why am I not like Mark Cuban?
Right. How
He's
do you
rich.
amplify this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's rich, but everybody knows who he is as well, right? So one of his most prolific clients is a woman called Janice Bryant Howroyd, who's the world's second most wealthy African American woman. And, prior to working with Nate, she was very famous and well, not famous, but she was very wealthy, very successful, very influential in her circles. She built a staffing company called Apple One, but she wasn't known in the entrepreneurial world at mass scale. So Nate helped her launch a book, launch a podcast, launch a speaking series, launched branded content webisodes. So he's been doing this stuff since before it was popular.
Yeah.
So, me and him collaborate often on projects, and he was nice enough to use me as a guinea pig for his model as basically book writing and authoring as a service. And the process was, I admittedly am not a great writer, so I'm a podcaster because all I have to do is show up and turn on the camera and let it go, and I don't necessarily have to write beautiful words. So Nate knew that I had a lot of great stories. I had a lot of great, tactics and things that I could share with an audience. So the way that we structured our ghostwriting sessions is we basically just showed up to Zoom calls and he had a bunch of questions to ask me and he asked me those questions and I told him the business principles that I had built my career on, and then I generally tried to tie it to like a story because I hate business books where they read like a just like an academic text. Like I've always really enjoyed the books where it's like I'm going to teach you something and then I'm going to tell you a story about a real life example of how I did it. Yeah, probably the greatest example of all time and the one that I tried to emulate the most is Keith Ferrazzi's book, Never Eat Alone. Keith was the youngest Fortune 500 chief marketing officer in history when he became the CMO of Deloitte, youngest Fortune 500 CMO when he was the CMO of Starwood in his 30s. And this book, Never Eat Alone, was written before LinkedIn, if you can imagine that. So it's how do you build genuine business relationships, authentic business relationships? How do you network with a generosity mindset as the basic principle of it? And that book was just so impactful to me as a young person, and I think it hit me because of that storytelling element of it. So back to my book. So basically, we did those sit-down sessions. I walked around my backyard in a circle on my 7-acre property and just talked into the phone, and Nate guided me and asked me questions. And then he would use AI to basically take that transcript and put it into something that was first draft usable, and then he would go through and edit it and make it much more like add in the business cases, formatting, just all the basic stuff. But yeah, so AI was basically the co-pilot. So the book is written by Dylan Conroy, Nate Pettyjohn, and AI, basically, when you
Well, I
get
mean, that's
down to it.
that's productivity 101, right? What's the saying? To write is human, to edit is divine. It's so true. Like if you
Yeah,
get
totally.
version, yeah, and edit it. So, go ahead,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, so I mean, look, AI has completely revolutionized, in my opinion, how you do sales, right? So probably I think the most important use case and what we really get into the book is like, how do you scale yourself as a salesperson, one, and how do you use AI as a research assistant that allows you to always have the most up-to-date information and to do your homework on people before you jump onto a call or you go out and take a business meeting. So many salespeople use the very first touch point as like a discovery moment or like a moment to like get to know somebody or to find out about them. And look, I think half the call that's probably very important. But with AI, there really is no excuse anymore to show up to a meeting and not be prepared, right? So I should know your bio. I should know three personal things about you that I can connect with personally. I should be looking at your last, publicly traded K1s of your company to see what your key priorities are. I should be using AI to figure out what software you've implemented in the last 90 days. Like I should really use AI as a way to take whatever I'm selling in my solution and create some match points before we jump on the call and some talking points. And then also to come up with some homework on like how do I connect with you as a person, not just in the business context. So we all have been on the call where we jump on and we talk about the weather and bullshit that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But what if you could use that time, three bullet points to go deep to really be like, okay, what fraternity did you go to, or what school does your daughter go to that she might need an internship at this year, or what are you interested? Do you like to golf? Do you like to play pickleball? Try to find things that you can kind of like
yeah,
go deep with the person
yeah.
quickly, right?
Common
So like
ground right away, right? Yeah,
yeah, like get to common ground and go as deep as you
yeah.
can, as fast as you can. And then the other thing is going deep, like go deep in your research too. Like really show up to a call with three key things that you want to accomplish based on research that you've done ahead of time and you've matched your solution to whatever the business use case that you're trying to sell to and really use it as that, informational co-pilot that it is. And I think that was kind of I would say like if there's one takeaway of how do salespeople use AI to be more successful in the future, now that's probably a big one. So
Sure.
I'll pause there for a second, let you get a word in.
No, that's good. That reinforces and reiterates. I had Bryn Tillman on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and she's social selling through LinkedIn, and she almost you word for word kind of said what you said there. Where like, there's no excuse to never be prepared for a sales meeting anymore with at least all the information you can get on LinkedIn, right? What tools are you using? I mean, I'm sure you're just having GPT scrape the
Yep.
URL, things of that nature.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, the other thing we should probably get into is how hard it is to get sales meetings now because of AI, though.
Yeah.
So when AI first came out, I was like, this is the greatest. Like
Yeah.
you telling me I can send 500 500 emails a day. I don't have to look up who the prospect is. I don't have to custom tailor and pitch the email. I can just let the robots run rampant and set up meetings for me, right? So I went probably too hard, too fast, like all into it.
You're just wanting
So
that 0.5% reply rate is all you're looking for.
yeah, like at that point I was probably sending out 6,000 emails a day between all of my different email accounts through.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the podcast really quick. If you're getting value from making big shifts, please subscribe and tap the bell so you don't miss the next conversation. All right. They appreciate it. And now back to the podcast.
Apollo or Seamless or Reply.io. I had all these spam cannons just humming, right? And I had to basically go back to zero because it was just creating noise, and I was getting meetings that weren't really well. They weren't good meetings. They weren't well qualified. So I think the good news for salespeople is that unfortunately AI as an SDR, in my opinion, I haven't found one that really kind of can do the job well and book you lots and lots of meetings. Now, like you mentioned, Josh, you can send 10,000 emails a day and hope for that low response rate, but I think a better use of your time is to take a breath, sit back and use these AI driven sales platforms as a way to just make your one-to-one emails much, much better. So for me, I've gone from like full spam cannon to less equals more. And I might only send 500 emails a day or 500 LinkedIn in mails a day or 500 connection requests per day, or I make 500 comments on people's profiles on LinkedIn, but now I do it with a lot more intention because I have
Yeah.
these AI tools to figure things out. So the one AI tool that I do think is getting pretty close, it's called Jason AI, and it's the AI SDR that sits inside of reply dot. When it first came out, they gave it to reps as a free trial, and then it was actually working pretty good. And then I ran out of the free trial, and it was pretty expensive to stay on
Yeah.
it. So I need to go back to it and check it out at some point. But it was doing pretty.
Really?
It was doing pretty good. Like all you did is you typed in your website. It would scan your website, come up with an ICP and a pitch. It would find the
Nice.
prospect, send the
Yeah.
email. It was doing everything, and it was doing it
Okay.
pretty well end to
Yeah.
end. But other than that, I haven't found like a silver
Right.
bullet for outreach yet.
Gotcha. What kind of tools are you using currently for maybe like in-mails, link
Yeah, so
comments,
so th-
things like that?
so LinkedIn's AI is getting pretty good.
Yeah.
I will usually use LinkedIn's in-mail AI generator. It kind of is similar to Jason AI. It just doesn't do it at scale. So basically what it'll do is like you can have like different products for different clients, and then it will customize it based on, what did they say on LinkedIn? What's their job status? What have they engaged with recently? So it does it pretty good. You still need to give it some customization. I wouldn't just hit the button and hit send like with any AI. It's always like let AI do 90% of the work and then you take it to the last mile. And then I do a lot of in-mails, but the other thing I really love about LinkedIn Sales Nav is that as you are either sending people in-mails, as you are sending them LinkedIn requests, they then go into your sales nav as a lead. And then the next time that person comments on LinkedIn, it'll show up as an alert in your feed. And more often than not, I don't do as much like inbound outreach to like I'll inbound to people once and then I'll just let them go into the
That's
lead
true.
filter. And then as they comment on LinkedIn, I just engage, I read their post, I try and write something smart, and then 9 times out of 10 they actually come into me. Like I
Oh,
don't
that's
have
cool.
to go they'll inbound to me once I've commented on their stuff, 5 to 10 times. And being a creator on LinkedIn, people underestimate how valuable an engagement or a comment is on somebody's
It
LinkedIn
goes to your
post.
heart sometimes, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, especially if you're, like if you're a solopreneur and you don't have
Yeah.
a big team of people that are like kind
Yeah.
of, or
Yeah. Yeah.
or you're not in some engagement group where everybody's
Yeah. Totally. Right.
slacking or
Yeah.
DMing their stuff to each other, engaging. I mean, it's hard to earn an engagement or a comment on LinkedIn. So just think about that as currency. Every time you give it, and don't give it without intention, but every time you give it with intention, people really appreciate it.
Totally. Yeah.
So, 5 to 10 well-placed comments and well-placed engagements on somebody's LinkedIn post, I would be hard pressed to not see some reciprocal, engagement
Yeah.
back.
Amen. Like, yeah, favors here and there. Right? I mean, it's also
Yeah.
like, and it helps the algorithms too, right? Because it spreads it farther to everybody else. And there's just a lot that goes into that. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's a very valuable point.
Yeah, there's two other tools that I'll walk you through. So, I mean, obviously just the LLMs themselves, right? So I'm a ChatGPT fan, not for any other reason that I just started using it
Same
first.
here.
Like it's, like Grok's probably great, Meta's probably great, Perplexity's probably great. I'm sure all these other ones are great, but ChatGPT does a good enough job. And I'm a big fan of like rewarding brands that give like whatever, if ChatGPT did a well enough job to get me into their funnel and to sign up for their free account across all my email platforms, I don't need to change my loyalty anytime soon unless somebody else gives me a real reason. And Gemini or any of these other platforms haven't given me a reason to switch
Yeah.
from ChatGPT so far.
Yeah.
Now, that might change when ChatGPT decides to monetize and that there starts to become
Definitely.
ads.
Yeah.
I think once there's ads, that's where people will start being like, okay, well, where's the free
Right.
version, and where how
Exactly.
can I quiet down the ads, right? So another one that is like absolute, like the best thing that I found in a really long time is a platform called Vendalux. And Vendalux is basically a database of every single event that's happening in the world, every conference in the world.
Okay.
And they have not only the name of the conference, when it is, where it is. So if you're just like trying to always know what conferences are in what markets and what industries, it's extremely effective for that. But they also have all the speakers, all the sponsors, and all the attendees' email addresses. So
Okay.
if you're like a habitual, I always hit up the speakers for conferences whether I'm going or not, but to have that next layer of like here's all the sponsors and the speakers details, that's like a whole nother level. And for me, I tend to spend 1 week in the studio and then I go on the road for a week. So I like that element of being able to be like, okay, I got CES right after the holidays. There's 20,000 people going to CES, maybe 100,000. How can I take that 100,000 people, drill that down to just the chief marketing officers that are going to be attending? How do I reach out and have a really full dance card during CES with the show? And then, if there's not enough C levels to interview, then I go, below the line down to the SVP. And then maybe I'm just asking for meetings and coffees and stuff like that. But it's an amazing tool if you want to,
For sure.
be productive at something like
Right.
CES versus running around and hoping you bump into
Yeah.
people. So
That's
yeah.
great. I'm definitely checking that out after this. So your week on, week in the studio, week off. And this is just from me being a former operations guy. How you keep continuity across everything? Because it's easy to get behind when you're a week in the field, right? So
Yep.
how are you maintaining that continuity?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually get a lot of work done when I'm in the field. Like
Yeah.
some people aren't productive in the field. When I'm at a conference, I'm actually more productive than when I'm in the office because when I'm in the office, I've got full days of shows and calls. But when I go in the field, I clear my calendar because I want to be productive in the field. So the only meetings I'm taking are in person at the event itself. I'm not taking any outside calls or meetings, especially internal calls with clients for status reports and
Yeah.
shit like that. So I'm able to clear my week and basically focus on in person. So if I don't have a meeting or a call or an interview in person at that event, chances are I'm listening to the speaker, but only out of my, I'm not paying attention, I'm listening, and I'm probably on my computer sending outreach or doing other things or booking other meetings. So I can be really effective in the field, especially if it's a conference like, something like CES that's so big, it's like you're running around. I spend most of my time at the ARIA because that's where the media people are and the marketers are. But if it's like a more intimate conference with like a few hundred people, yeah, I can get a shit ton done at that.
That's cool. Very cool.
Yeah, and then, I have some VAs that help, stay on
Yeah.
top of emails, and they'll text me if things get crazy, or they'll Slack me if, there's something. And that's the other thing too, like because I'm all sales and all biz dev, most of, my wife does the operations for the agency. My VAs handle kind of like the, I would call like the grunt work, and, my job is just,
Phil.
belly to belly with clients, man,
Yeah.
and seeing the whites of their eyes. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell us, I should say, a little bit about your podcast, the ad
Yeah.
podcast. Obviously, you're interviewing, talking to C-suite across is it a certain niche or where's your
Yeah,
playground?
it's a great question. So I started the podcast in 2019, really just as a response to the fact that I wasn't getting those CMO meetings anymore.
Right. Yeah.
When I was young, when I was first in my career coming into digital, you have to remember that I started in digital when MySpace was popular. Facebook, you still needed a Harvard email address to get on. And YouTube had just launched and hadn't been acquired by Google yet, right? So that's how early I was to the space. So CMOs would take meetings with me because I was a young 20 something and I was digitally native and I was speaking a language that they had never heard before. As time progressed, I became less and less relevant to the modern CMO who was digitally native. And now I had to rely 100% on my offering. And if my offering couldn't get their attention, which in many times, startup, small budgets didn't have the brand recognition that, other companies did. So now it was harder to get those meetings, even dangling the carrot of, hey, I'll take you to a dinner or something like that. I mean, these CMOs can go and do anything they want any night of the week. They go to any sporting event, any five-star restaurant, any, bar or exclusive nightclub. They can do anything they want anytime. So unless you can create opportunities that money can't buy, which I've created some interesting ones over the years, but that generally takes budget. So I tried to think, okay, well, maybe if I had a podcast that they would come on and I was reaching out about them coming on a podcast versus them taking a sales meeting with them, maybe that would change the calculus somehow. So before I ever had a podcast, I just cooked up an email as if I did, and I started reaching out to CMOs, and within 7 emails I had a booking.
Isn't
And
that
I was like, oh,
crazy? Yeah, that's
yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
And when that happened, I was like, oh shit, I got to launch a podcast and figure it out.
Let's go.
And so I launched it. The other cool part is I was working with Adobe as a client at the time, so I had a lot of access to software and expertise. So I got it up and running, I got it humming, and I just started getting those higher level meetings. And then the thing that I didn't really expect is for it to go anywhere. Honestly, if all I did was talk to the guest and I was in a closet and they thought they were on a podcast and they never got any audience from it, like that would have been good enough for me. But it actually started to get traction. So now I've got close to 32,000 followers on LinkedIn.
Sweet. Yeah.
It's not uncommon for my show to do 25,000 views on LinkedIn. I get a lot of inbound from PR firms now. So a lot of my guests are
Right.
inbound pitches.
This is cool. Yeah.
I get invited to all of the top industry conferences as press. Can, BS, possible, the things in my industry that salespeople pay $5,000 to $35,000 to attend. I get invited for free, and I also get invited to all the cool events and parties and behind the velvet rope where they're
Yeah.
all still on the outside. So that was the first step, was like, okay, now it's growing. Now I'm getting inbound. Now I'm getting invited to things. And then the next step was when it actually started to monetize, when I started to
Yeah.
get sponsors who wanted to get in front of those same people. And it became probably like originally it was maybe the tertiary reason that people hired me. Now it's the primary reason that people hire me for the consultancy.
That's very
So,
interesting.
I call myself a CRO with a megaphone,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, now that you are growing, or you are getting to that stage where you're at now, and you get a lot of these guests inbound, are you still doing active outreach even for
Yeah,
sponsors?
a great person will never rest on their laurels, right? So yeah, a lot of my day is vetting inbound, but then as soon as I'm inbox zero, I'm right back on offense. So, and the reality is, inbound is good for what I call like programming the long tail. So if an inbound, but I've got some crazy inbound recently. Like last week I got the CMO of Dan and Yogurt inbound.
Cool.
I got the CMO of Prudential Insurance inbound. I got the chairman of Stagwell, which is the fifth largest ad agency in the world, inbound. Now, this is interesting though. Sometimes there's a phrase in marketing, I know my marketing's working, I don't know which part.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if those inbounds were because organic, but the other thing that I'm doing to scale myself as a salesperson is I actually buy my own ads now. So I will put up a post on LinkedIn and I'll boost it to my target ICP. And a lot of times that's I basically do an invitation to come on the show. I throw $500 behind it. I boost it to CMOs. I put my cell phone and my email address right in the post, and I start to get those inbounds.
That's a smart idea.
Yeah, totally. So there's so that's the other component of like how do you leverage AI is a lot of the clips that I put up are not AI generated, they're AI edited.
Yes.
So you know how I don't know how Riverside works. I use Restream, but
Mm-hmm.
at the end of every show, Restream says, "Here's 5 clips,
Yeah.
and
The
here's the
Riverside
ones
thing.
we think will have the most viral," right? So
Pretty sweet, right? You get your clips, your snippets, and then even some stills, some good graphics. So
yeah, totally.
that's all. Now, have you been doing the same for sponsorships, or sponsors inbound to you as well? A little bit of both,
Yeah,
probably.
sponsors are inbound. I actually don't reach out for sponsors. I reach out for people to cover the cost for me to go to events from time to time, but my feeling is I don't want to dilute the show with sponsors. If sponsors come to me and there's a great offer, then I might consider it. but I'd rather just focus on the show because I make enough money in consulting. The monetization of the show doesn't need to be the factor for me. So the longer I can keep it pure, I will. And if the sponsor is super integrated, like I have a sponsor that I'm hesitant to plug because they're no longer a sponsor, but this was my first sponsor, High Level.
Really nice.
Yeah. And look, like they came in and they offered me $5,000 a month, like right out of the gate. And I was like, wow, that's a nice chunk of change. And, we worked together for a few months and they didn't see the conversion that they needed. And I wasn't willing to, cheapen my rate or to do more posts for them than we initially agreed to. And they're not a sponsor anymore. And that's okay. We both served each other in a purpose for an amount of time. But what I would rather have is I would rather have clients that see the value of not only associating with the brand from a perspective of like, okay, like they're going to drive like hardcore performance. It's more like that relational aspect of like, okay, they know that they're going to be associated not just with my show, but with the caliber of guests that I get, and that those are going to be good introductions and good potential biz dev prospects for them the same way that, people who might see the show.
It's very cool. Now, I know before the show, you and I talked about a little bit back and forth about, and this might be something you help with your consultant clients, right? But like how podcasts can be so valuable for lead generation, sales generation, just due to the relationship aspect of it. And you talk about relationships in your book, of course, too. So how does that tie all together?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I have an entire chapter in the book why
Nice.
every sales team needs a podcast, and I'm starting to come to the idea that every person needs a podcast, or everybody with a personal brand needs a podcast.
Yeah.
Why does every sales team need a podcast? Well, it's just a much easier, less salesy way to reach out to high level prospects. So if I was a sales leader inside a large organization and I had a podcast and all of my frontline people could invite folks onto that podcast, what a great way to empower them and empower your frontline sales team to add value to potential prospects and clients. Not only are you then creating value for your sales team, but then every guest you put on, now you're building an own media channel as well. And then now you're basically every podcast becomes a studio day for your go to market content team. And you pull all that content over, you give it to your paid team, and then they can use it for ads. So, really, in my opinion, any legitimate sales organization that doesn't have a podcast in B2B right now is probably not forward thinking. I would not be investing in them in the stock market or anywhere otherwise. And then, the other component from a personal perspective, like why you have a podcast and why I have a podcast is yes, it's great for business. It does all of those things. But more importantly, it allows me to meet a high volume of interesting
Yeah.
people that are exciting, that I have something in common with. I can have a nice, long, non-salesy conversation with them, build a relationship. They're adding value to me. They're platforming me. I'm adding value to them. I'm giving them content and promotion through my platform. So it's just a win-win-win for everybody. And it's just like I couldn't think of a better potential way to start a relationship
Yeah.
in business. There's nothing that even comes close.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. And it's such a win-win, right? And that's honestly the reason I started this. It wasn't for the sales aspect of it. It was literally to have interesting conversations with people throughout the world. I'm based in central Missouri, not the networking hub of the world, right? But like now I'm
Sure.
talking to you out in LA, right? And I was talking to somebody in New York yesterday. So it's just a really cool way to build relationships like you were saying.
100%. And
Yeah.
then, the other component, of course, is, as you build a larger and larger platform, you get access to cooler. I mean, it's funny, like sometimes nowadays, I decide what events to go to, not always based on the caliber of the speakers and the guests, but like how interesting and appealing is it going to be visually? Like
Oh,
like I now I think about video more than I think about, especially for the in-person show. It's like, what plane am I going to get on? What's the B-roll? Is it, something like CES is going to have a bunch of cool gadgets and
yeah,
cool technology that's going to look really good on camera. Auto shows are going to look really cool because they've got flashy, exciting cars, but I'm not going to go to things that aren't in a location that isn't cinematic and isn't going to give me good B-roll opportunity because, I want to continue to up level my production value every single time I go out into the field. So, it's funny to like now be thinking about those things in the perspective of like, okay, what content am I going to get out of this trip versus who am I going to meet?
for sure. No, that's great. Yeah, that's I'm sure I'll eventually get there too, right? So that's really cool. That's good advice. How do you, for people just getting started podcasting, mine's a new journey too. What is your advice to them? I mean, even for sales teams that are starting it, I know you had sent out 7 emails just to see if there was a response, right? When you started yours, did you have a go-to-market plan for your podcast? Did you have an idea around it? What was it?
Absolutely not. I mean, for me, my go-to-market was like, could I get somebody to say yes, right? And sure enough, I sent 7 emails, and the chief revenue officer of Twitch said yes, and he was the first guest. And keep in mind, in 19 there weren't as many podcasts, so it was
Yeah.
even easier to get guests back then. But my biggest advice to those who want to do a podcast is just to start. The technology is too pervasive, it's too easy to not do it. My kit here, I've got a Yeti mic, cost me $100. I have a barn door light here. This thing cost me maybe $100, right? I've got a DLSR behind me that's a 2-generation camera that my wife's a photographer, so this is a camera that she got rid of 3 cameras ago that I'm using for my DLSR for my video. My headphones, luckily my friend's the CEO of Skull Candy, so I have about 100 pairs of Skull Candy headphones.
Pretty handy.
The kit that I have is all either hand-me-downs or less than $100 per technology item. And the other thing is the iPhone has become a better camera than a DLSR. So when you're in the field, you really don't need anything except a gimbal. A gimbal makes you look a little bit more professional and have a little bit more of a stable shot. But other than that, here's my audio, 2 Rode mics, $100. It's totally noise isolating. I've shot content at music festivals that are perfect audio just by clipping this onto your
Wow.
shirt. So,
Yeah.
and then the one part that's hard if you're not doing live, and I like live because I don't have to worry about edits and it's up instantly. But the only thing that you have to worry about if you're going to go out in the field is editing. And I use another AI called Lucy Hub, which is basically if Frame.io had AI attached to it and had editors in the Philippines for final touches. And as I'm doing the show in the field, I'm uploading clips through the mobile app to Lucy Hub, and by the time I get home that night, I've got a finished video that's ready to
Magic.
post.
Magic.
So yeah, it's all about speed.
That is
I'd say done beats perfect. So
right.
just get
Yeah.
started.
Totally. Awesome. Well, Dylan, where can people find more information about you, your podcast, your book, all of the
Thanks,
above?
buddy. Yeah, so the book is available wherever you find books, but Amazon's the easiest place to find it. There's a lot of books called Going Deep, so I would just type in Going Deep Dylan Conroy or Going Deep or Dylan Conroy book, something of that nature. So this is basically the culmination of my career working for guys like Keith Ferrazzi, learning generous relationship building, but then kind of the tech layer of like leveraging AI to do it in a way that's scalable and repeatable. And how do you emerge as a modern day salesperson in this age of AI, which is making it harder and harder to break through. And then if you want to listen to the show, it's the Ad Podcast anywhere where podcasts are available, or you can always find it through my personal socials at dylanconroy.com.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate your time. This has been a great conversation. I'm going to have you back on here in a little bit.
Anytime. Thanks, Josh. Really appreciate you making the time, and always excited to talk to a fellow podcaster.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to Making Big Shifts by Marketing Reboot, where we talk to real entrepreneurs making really big shifts. Subscribe and like the video, and we'll talk to you next time.
Let's go.
Hey, guys, thanks so much for listening to Making Big Shifts by Marketing Reboot. It would be a huge help to us if you subscribe to the channel and share this with somebody that you think needs it. Your support helps us continue to bring great guests on board and keep the conversation going. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Making Big Shifts. Like, share, and follow for more. Join us next time on Making Big Shifts, presented by Marketing Reboot.